we are live, Chair.
Good pawb, croeso. Good morning. Welcome to this meeting of the Health and Care Scrutiny Committee. My name is Gareth Jones. I'm the Vice Chair of the Health and Care Scrutiny Committee, and I'm chairing the meeting to start with until Councillor Amanda joins us after having a medical appointment. Could I start by welcoming Councillor Sandra and Councillor Sean as the two portfolio holders to the meeting, and also the officers and any members of the public who are watching us live, or even those who watch the recording at a later date. Can we start with any apologies, please, Carrie Ann?
Yes, Chair. We have apologies from Councillor Carol Robinson and Councillor Josie Ewing.
Okay, thank you. And any declarations of interest, members? I take silence as no, it's fine. And any disclosures of party whips? And I'll pick the same silence as no. Can we go on to 2 minutes? What I intend to do is just ask if everybody's happy with them for correctness, and then perhaps we go through them for matters arising. Can we start with the meeting on the 20th of September? Are they accurate in our minds? Can we have a proposal in a second, please? I can't see any hands yet.
I'll propose.
Thank you. Anybody wants a second?
I can't second because I wasn't at the meeting.
Okay. Well, I was, so I'm happy to second. And then can we go to the minutes of the 25th of October, please? Again, if everybody's happy, can we propose in a second? Well, I'm happy to propose. And Chris is second. Thank you. Right, can we go through them for any matters arising? And what I thought we'd do is just go through them point by point under the action boxes. And the first one's on page 5, where there's issues, and we've had quite a comprehensive response there. But there are 2 actions at the bottom. I don't know if we've had those. No. The first one's about a committee, but they're both about coming back to committee in December, so we'd make the note of that. And then if we can go back on around the corporate safeguarding board, here's about the percentages given on page 2. Yes, Nina, sorry.
Yeah, thank you. I think I did follow up in writing on this in email, a response to this, but I thought it'd be handy just to point out here as well, Chair, if I may. You questioned the percentages of staff being right, but it was actually the Director of Social Services Wellbeing budget line where there's only actually a couple of people sat within that budget line, so the percentages were correct, and I just wanted to provide that assurance.
Right, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, just picking up on the corporate safeguarding board, and Nina has identified that both Councillor Amanda and myself should be on the corporate safeguarding board, and we haven't been invited previously, so we've now got those invites. So we'll have a closer input into that. And then if we then go on anything, I know you had a point you wanted to raise, Chris.
Yeah, there was a couple of points on these minutes, the 20th of September. Reason why I raised them mainly is because I wasn't present, because I was away. I wanted to seek clarification, first of all, is regarding the joint inspection child protection issue that we had in September. I believe there was that, and I understand there's an action plan, but I've not seen a copy of the report, and I don't know whether that's been brought to us. So I'm just checking, has that been brought to scrutiny? Are we looking to do it? And I don't believe I've seen the action plan, but with everything going on, I may have missed it. So I seek clarification on that point, first of all, Chair.
Nina had her hand up and it's gone down, but Sharon's got her hand up now. So, Sharon.
Yeah, morning. Just for clarification, that report is on its way to scrutiny with the action plan. So it hasn't actually arrived as yet, Councillor Chris, but it is due to be coming now in the new year.
Okay, okay. That's helpful. Then there was the other query I had is in relation to the violence and aggression against women and domestic abuse. Training was reported that within schools it had dropped, and what I can't really get is a clear understanding from this is why and what was the reasons and what actions and mitigations were going on.
Yes, Nina.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Chris, for the question. Apologies, I don't have that report or information in front of me this morning, but it has been noted the training and compliance rates with training within schools as an area that the Corporate Safeguarding Board are going to be looking at in more detail moving forward. We've got a December meeting of the board coming up in about a fortnight's time, and there is going to be a more in-depth look at particularly the schools training and compliance rate. So with the next activity report that we bring to yourselves as Health and Care Scrutiny, Councillor Chris, we'll be able to go into the detail, and the service I know have been looking at what actions they can undertake to help improve that as well.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any more questions on the first set of minutes for the 20th of September? If not, can we go on for the minutes of the 25th of October? Any issues there that members want to raise? Getting down now. The first actions were on, so I missed that. I just skipped through it. No, it wasn't there, not actions. Sorry. Yeah, there's an action on page 22 around arrangements between Paris County Council and health boards where officers can provide more information on the falls. Yes, Sharon.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, we've had an initial meeting. The gentleman that works the several actions around the equipment as well, and our officer who oversees that work has been off sick recently. But we've got a meeting planned with the health board around gathering the data and the request for the monthly report. So we should be able to start providing that in the new year.
Okay, thank you. Anything else on that item? If we then go on to performance reports, there's one action there around an update on, I can never say this word, WICIS. There's an action on you, Nina, but I don't know whether you've got an update for today or do we need to do it elsewhere?
I can certainly give us an update later under any other business in confidential session, if that's okay, Chair.
Yeah, that's
but
fine.
we will be bringing an update to formal scrutiny as soon as possible as well.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Any other members got any questions on the minutes? Right. Now, can we move on to the only item we have on the agenda, which is the finance forecast for the year ending 31st of March 25, as at the end of September. What I thought we'd do, because Nina's provided a very comprehensive report in Appendix D, we just go through it and pick at any points members have got on the main report and then skip to Appendix D, if that's all right, and allow officers to take us through that. And just to remind members, this has already gone through the finance panel, and it's also went through cabinet, I think, week last Tuesday. Yeah, so it's already gone through panel. So any questions from members on the main body of the report? And then anything on the initial appendices? I've got one question, and I'm not sure this is maybe for Anne or Jackie. There's a statement there around the overspend on the debt financing, and it's very brief on Appendix B. It's like one single sentence, and I think at some stage we will need more details around that. I don't know whether Anne wants to come in or not.
Yes, yes, Councillor Gareth. We'll plan to put a more comprehensive update in the next Treasury Management report,
Right.
which runs through Cabinet, but actually goes into audit and governance for their approval. So,
Okay.
yeah, absolutely, more information to be provided across the
Okay.
council.
Yeah, and I think we need to have an understanding of what the basis of the initial figure was and why the causes of the overspend, and how that's projected into next year, really, I think.
Absolutely, we've got that information pulled together already.
Right, okay, thank you. Right, can we move on to Appendix D? I don't know, you want to play this, Nina? Do you want to lead and then bring the Sharons in as appropriate?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm happy if I'll take a scrutiny briefly through the report. I know you've had the chance to read it in advance, but I think it'd just be helpful to take you through the highlights, if I may. As you said, I've got Sharon Fruin and Sharon Powell here as the two heads of service. So they're happy to take any questions on the detail and in particular the rectification plans that they are both leading on for their respective service areas as well. But we've also supported by colleagues from finance as well. So just to let you all know. Firstly, sorry, remiss of me, I should have just said that Councillor David Thomas has given his apologies for this morning. He would have liked to have come along and presented the overarching report to you himself this morning, but he's not available. So just want to put his apologies and note those, please. But as you said, Councillor Gareth, Chair, that these reports have been through Cabinet and Finance Panel before them as well. Appendix D that you've got in front of you today is a report from myself as Director of Social Services, which is outlining the detail behind the budget forecast position for Q2 for social services. And that report forms the basis of a report that will be going to full council next Thursday. So as a viament request for funding to support social services. So you'll be having that come into full council. I think those papers are probably going to be published today as well. So just to let you know that this is then going on to full council next week. So, Chair, if I may, I'll just take you and the committee briefly through the report that you have in front of you today. The purpose of the report is to provide an update on social services spending pressures, and I've included the national context, but also the local level as well for information. So as of Q2, adult social care, the forecast outturn position, so it's not a realised position, it's a forecast position at the end of Q2 is a overspend position of £4.431 million. If the service delivers the outstanding savings efficiencies that are in the finance resource model, that would reduce the overspend position to 3.082 million, which equates to 3.33% of the annual adult social care budget. For children's services, the forecast outturn position exceeds the baseline budget by 4.871 million at the end of Q2. And if the cost reductions are delivered in full, then the forecast overspend would be reduced to 2.745 million, which equates to 8.93% of the children's services annual budget. So section 2 of the report takes you through the Welsh context. The Welsh Local Government Welsh Local Government Association have recently, in the last couple of weeks, released a report which has been really interesting, going into the detail of social services financial pressures across Wales, both looking at the current year and next year. And within that report, they note the pressures on local government both in year and then the significant projected in-year pressures across Wales, but how social care makes up 45% of that estimated overall additional in-year pressures currently facing Welsh local authorities, which equates to £106 million. And that recent years have seen significant social services overspends across Wales. And those financial pressures are expected to continue as well into the future and into the future financial years as well. So in terms of social services, section 2.7 of the report onwards goes into detail with adult social care. So, and I think it's important to note that despite the national trend, adult social care in Powys has delivered a balanced or underspend position over recent years and delivered significant savings. It delivered 100% of its £4.6 million savings last year, for example. So the base budget for adult social care is 92.6 million. And this did include £8.6 million additional funding put in to support pressures. And those pressures included contract inflation, real living wage for providers, for example. So within the FRM, the service had identified 1.647 million of pressures which are held at risk. So these are pressures that the service expected or anticipated to be realised, but of course they hadn't been realised at the time of the budget setting. So the decision was made to hold those at risk. And those included demographic pressures, Powys Care Homes uplift, and hours on the croft. And so, and I know you'll be well aware that hours on the croft. So these are people with assessed care and need support. Assessed need for care and support that are waiting for dom care. So that was identified as a risk as well. The Q1 outturn position for adult social care was already showing a £214,000 deficit position. And the Q1 report highlighted the risk of those future pressures materialising in terms of commission providers, the care home sector, winter pressures and potential demand on home-based care and interim beds as well, and that those people sat on the croft as well. So those risks were highlighted in the Q1 report, with a particular risk to delivery of cost savings highlighted if hospital discharge pressures and referrals continued at the rate that was being seen in Q1. So at Q2, the forecast outturn position has moved to a 4.431 million overspend position. Of the cost reductions identified, 64.66% of those had already been achieved by Q2, with work ongoing to deliver the remaining. So this is a significant change since the Q1 position and is due to increased service demand and pressures in residential and home care across all service areas and costs associated with provider stability over and above that which was funded within the financial resource model. The report goes into detail of the spend position across the different areas within the service, and that is provided there for you. I'll just briefly go through just a couple, Chair, of the kind of key points. But in older people, for example, there's been an additional 50 nursing beds, 18 residential EMI placements, an additional 68 clients receiving home care, which is more than 1,500 additional hours of dom care being provided per week, and 9 new direct payment packages to prevent carer breakdown, for example. Within learning disabilities, we've got additional service users in receipt of home care, 9 new residential placements, contracts being moved in terms of the commissioning arrangements, and 3 new tenancies, etc. So the report goes into detail of the reason for the overspends and the areas that they have been realised. In terms of, obviously, this is all meeting our statutory responsibilities. So just to make that clear that this is spend meeting our statutory responsibilities. And then there's more detail there. In terms of, then I'll go into children's services. So children's services has been historically in a forecast deficit position at Q2 over previous years as well. And the report goes into that detail. The budget for children's services for the current year, the base budget is £30.726 million with cost reductions of 2.4 proposed and pressures of 3.7 million held at risk from the corporate risk budget. And I think this is really important because with demography held at risk in children's services, for example, and similar with adults, you know, from the 1st of April, any new children or young people coming into the service or any people coming to adult social care, they're put in the, you know, that's an additional pressure that is funded at risk. So puts the budget into an overspend position from that very start of the year as well. So at Q1, the children's services forecast outturn position was a budget deficit of 5.295 million. And then with additional risks highlighted within the report. At Q2, the overspend position forecast was 4.871 million. Which, as I said earlier, equates to 8.93% of the annual base budget if the savings are realised that were proposed. Then the report shows you the breakdown of the service areas of where those overspend positions are. And within children's services, the greatest impact is in children looked after placements. And I think it's really important that we kind of highlight this for you. So this is, yes, some are new placements for children becoming looked after, but it's also the step up in provision and increasing costs to meet the needs of our current cohort as well. And as this is set within a national context of a shortage of placements across the country, and I know that you'll all be very well aware of the corporate parenting responsibilities that we all have to these children and young people within our care. So it also talks about the other areas of overspend, and you know, we're happy to go into those details, but I'd just like to draw to your attention that the number of children looked after is very stable and fairly stable in Powys. So you could see we've included a graph there. In October 2023, we had 238 children looked after, and exactly the same number in October 2024. However, the costs of those placements has changed significantly. So September 2023, for example, we were seeing an annual cost of £6.7 million. That has risen to £10.1 million by September 2024. So a really significant increase in the costs of placements. So it's not increasing number of placements, it's actually the increasing costs. And we've put the details of that within the report for you as well. So, Chair, that sets out the kind of the reasons and the explanation, and you can see within the report where those overspends are forecast. And then Section 3 of the report goes on to what we're doing as a result of that. So the service are taking all appropriate actions to reduce spend as far as possible and improve on that forecast deficit position. But of course, taking into absolute, you know, is important for all of us that we deliver on assess need and deliver on our statutory responsibilities. So want to make that absolutely clear. This has been taken seriously across the directorate. I want to, you know, give assurance, and we're all here today to give that assurance that officers are being held accountable for their budget areas, and it's important that they're provided with the tools and support available to them to help them to do that. The two heads of service have put in place budget rectification plans that they are overseeing with a series of actions to help with the deficit position, forecast deficit position. So, and some of the actions within that include a recruitment freeze, except for essential positions, spend controls on non-essential spend. Any expenditure on new placements is being approved following sign off and check-in by the heads of service and Section 151 officer. We're reviewing existing placements to make sure that they're the right size. We've undertaken and completed staff training. We are looking at reviewing eligibility in adult social care, for example, and that's currently legal. We're making sure that we're maximising all external sources of funding, and we're reviewing monitoring contractual arrangements as well. Obviously, delivering on the proposed cost savings is going to be really important. So the services have been looking at the current cost savings in the FRM to making sure that we can deliver those, and if not, putting in place mitigating actions. The report notes a reminder about the Council's corporate parenting responsibilities and statutory and safeguarding obligations, but we will always look to source the most cost-effective placement. But we do note that there is often very limited choice due to the current market challenges and placement availability. And then section 4 is about the resource implications. So there's more detail there, some of which I've gone through as well. An environment request will be going to full council next week to request funding from the risk budget, but also for adult social care from a specific reserve as well. And the details of that are provided within section 4 for your information. So, Chair, I hope that's okay and I haven't got into too much or too little detail, but as I said, you know, we're here as officers and happy to take any questions that you and the committee may have. Thank you.
Thank you. And Sharon Powell had her hand up. Did you want to come in, Sharon?
I think it was a mistake. Apologies, Chair.
Okay, right. What I intend to do, members, is if we go back to section 2 and just work through those points. And if anybody wants to make general issues now, can they raise their hands, please? Can I just start off by saying, in another light, I work with apprentices doing their SIP for qualification in England. And as part of the meetings I have with them, I always ask them, are they aware what the main pressures in their authorities are? And for those apprentices in authorities that have got social services, adult social services and children's services always come out as high, that and homelessness, because a lot of my apprentices are in England. I can see no hands. Can I just start off with a question around how the decision is made on what we put at risk? For adults, for example, there's 1.647 million. I wouldn't mind some more detail on how that figure is arrived at. I don't know which officer wants to take that. Yes, Nina.
Yeah, Chair, thank you. I'm happy to start, but perhaps Anne as well might be appropriate to come in to give the finance kind of point of view. So the decision to hold things at risk, well, obviously the budget is decided by full council, but when the decision between pressures are within the FRM or within to be held at risk is whether they've been whether they have materialized or not. So, for example, if I use adult social care as an example, so during the current financial year, we will have people come into the service new. So they're new clients that we're supporting, etc. So that risk is held at risk because we anticipate and we forecast that we, of course, will be having people coming into the service. But until they are realised, it's a held at risk demography pressure. But those moving into next year then will be a real pressure and they will be shown in with the FRM. So the difference is whether they've been realised or not. I think that's a terminology, but perhaps Anne could give a bit more of a financial update. But does that make sense, Chair? Have I explained that and use an example?
It does, but perhaps before Anne comes in, I can bring Sharon Fruin in.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, thanks, Chair. I was just going to give another example. It's for instance, we hold some hours on the cross. So those people who are awaiting domiciliary care, home care packages that we haven't been able to source yet. We know the need is there, but we haven't got the capacity in the marketplace to deliver it. We don't know when that marketplace may come online. So it's held at risk because we don't actually know that that is going to become an eventuality or at what time that's going to become an eventuality. So like Nina said, it's actually, you know, we can't say that it's materialized as yet.
And perhaps one final question from me is, part of this pressure on the budget, projected overspend from my point of view, is down to the success of the service or actually releasing people from bed blocking, etc. in hospitals. And perhaps Sharon could give a little bit more example of those numbers, if possible.
Yeah, Chair, I was going to say exactly, and that relates directly to my comment around the Croft, because we've been doing, you'll have had reports previously around our transformation programme around care closer to home and care at home. So developing the marketplace around direct payments and domiciliary care. So for instance, this year we've had 9 new providers come onto our dynamic purchasing system. So that's 9 additional organisations who are able to offer support in the community for the people of Powys, and therefore we are now delivering upwards of 1,500 more hours domiciliary care this year than we were last year.
Right, okay. And perhaps before I bring Anne in, if Councillor Chris has got his hand up, so if I ask Chris to raise his question, then I'll bring you in then, Anne. That's all right? Chris. You're on mute, Chris.
Apologies on the thank you for a very comprehensive report, Nina. I think it's really helpful. My questions were around is what's caused the increase in this demand coming through, and I think you've articulated it quite well on there. One of the premises that is within the report overall is that you're saying that there will be still an overspend position, but some of that is going to be offset by some of the savings that are going to be coming through. What I haven't got an impression of is how assured are we that those savings are going to be delivered, because you're in one way saying we're going to make savings, but then we'll go into the risk management budget, the fund, to be able to pull money in order to give you an assured position of being able to still deliver. So I'd just like to understand that a little bit more. And then in relation to the Croft, I take it, and correct me if I'm wrong, these are clients that we've seen, we've assessed that there is a need, and those we've not got either a provider or a team internally to be able to provide them with that package of care. So a question is then, is that if we've got a delay in that happening, how much detriment does that then place on that client, and how does that then escalate the needs going forward, and is that then a greater need on there? And do we, if we've identified they've got a need, do we then have any linkage to the health board to be able to say, this is not going to be delivered now? Is there a package that they can put in place that would maybe at the next level, but it would actually prevent things getting even worse going forward? So it's about levels of intervention around acuity of that patient need. I don't know if I've articulated that correctly, but I hope I have.
Sharon.
Thank you, Chair. Shall I come in on Councillor Chris's question around the Croft? And Councillor Chris, forgive me if I don't answer it all, and you may need to remind me of some of the points. I tried to scribble them down.
Okay.
So you're absolutely right. The people that are held on the Croft are those people who've been identified as having a need that could be met by a domiciliary care package, and that we are yet to source a package in their area that could meet their needs. And sometimes it's around not being able to fulfill the hours. Sometimes it's around matching of gender, and sometimes it's around just sheer lack of capacity. And hence the transformation programme we've had around trying to increase the numbers of providers in the domiciliary care market. We will hold some people in our bridging service, and that's why it's called the bridging service. It's to bridge the gap between usually discharge from hospital to a provider being available, recognising the fact that if people are in hospital waiting for the package of care, then the detrimental effects every day has on their muscle wastage, their skills, their confidence to be able to return home. So we want to avoid that as much as possible. Therefore, we've got the bridging service, and we have historically had an issue of that being congested as well, because we've got the delay in being able to move forward with a package from a provider. We also, recognising your comment, Councillor Chris, around those levels of interventions and actually maybe needing to overprescribe to prevent further deterioration in condition. So we will access what we call interim beds. So sometimes we'll access beds within care homes that are for an interim basis, recognising again the fact that being in a care home is better than being in hospital, where the deconditioning has a significant impact, but being home is the ultimate aim.
Yeah.
So we will work with our colleagues in the health board. We've got step down, we call them step down beds for reablement at Glanirvon. We've also got some beds available at Cottage View. So we're constantly working with our colleagues in the health board to try and make that balance. It is a really difficult issue for us squaring that off, because obviously those interim beds are more costly. But to prevent deterioration, then you're cost avoiding. We also have an issue then with timely reviews of those people who are in interim beds, because sometimes often we find that when people go into a care home that they become very comfortable. They don't want another change. Their families become comfortable with that arrangement, and therefore then they sometimes don't want to leave that care home to return home. So it's a bit of a we're between a rock and a hard place. There's a real small window of opportunity to avoid people going into residential care too early, but balancing that against leaving people in hospital deconditioning. So
Okay.
it's quite a complicated scenario, and having that oversight of those packages and those people to make sure we get the optimum delivery at the right time is something that we're really working hard at now through our rectification plan, and identifying that we possibly need to move resources into a team to make sure that we have more timely oversight of those people, so that we get the right outcome at the right time but avoid any increased costs.
So can I ask them, within Croft, because I'm not familiar with it, is there an acuity measure within that system to be able to pull that out, or is it not as sophisticated as that?
No, the Croft is really just a holding place where providers can go in and see what packages are needed and where, and then they can bid for them. So it really is a holding place for providers to pick up packages. It's something that we are looking to develop through our transformation of the reablement service. We're trying to, and we're working with colleagues in the health board looking at that service to see if we can free up capacity in the bridging team to do some of that acuity work.
Okay.
So that we have a better understanding and again more timely response.
Okay. Thank you.
Nina.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Chris. Your first question was around the savings proposals within the FRM for 2004-25, isn't it?
Yes.
And I think I briefly touched on it, but it was very briefly, is that we are looking at those at the moment, the existing ones that haven't been delivered, because of course within adults they've already delivered, I think it's over a 68% now of those efficiency savings. So we're looking at those remaining because some of them, the increased demand and things have changed within the year, so we are having to relook at them. So that's ongoing at the moment, but we'll be looking to mitigate for those that we don't think we're going to be able to deliver in full as well. So that work's ongoing at the moment, Councillor Chris.
Okay.
Can I just pick up a couple of points that Sharon made about the hospital placements? Chris and I attended the Sustainable Power session in Brecon last night, and there's 3 officers there from senior officers there from health, and one of their, I think they said it was 45 or 48 days that the average stay is, and they're looking to bring that down for the very reason you said, Sharon, around muscle wastage, etc. They're looking to, in effect, half that figure in round figures. So I think that's a really important fact that we need to take account of. Does any other sorry, Sharon, yeah?
No, sorry, Chair. I just wanted to add, just to give kind of some kind of context around the demand that is having. So we're receiving probably upwards of 10 more referrals to our hospital discharge team a month this year than we have previously. So the numbers of people going into hospital and needing support on discharge is increasing significantly.
Okay. And perhaps I shouldn't ask this question, but I'm going to. So how many clients are dropping off per month through various reasons? Do you know that information?
Not to my fingertips at the moment.
Okay.
It's such a movable feast. It's a figure that varies quite significantly. But we do capture that every week. We look at new packages and the packages that are being handed back, usually because circumstances have changed, or unfortunately they've passed away.
And obviously this pressure is partly caused because of the baby booms after the war.
And medical science has progressed so much, isn't it? People are living far longer with more complicated conditions, but also a series of coexisting comorbidities. So we're almost a victim of our own success.
Yeah. And I think somebody said at the meeting last night that the peak for the rise in population following the post-war explosion in babies is something like 2040. So we've got another. Sorry, Nina. Yeah.
Yeah, Chair, you're absolutely right. We're at the start of the bell curve of this aging population here in Powys, and so there's a long way to go in terms of I think it is 2040 off the top of my head, but we've got all of that information. We're happy to share that with you again if you're interested as a committee, etc. But of course, it's not just the aging population here in Powys; it's also the decreasing working age population as well. So we have challenges, and it's partly adults and children's, isn't it? The recruitment and retention of staff and care staff as well, specifically in both children's and adults, is also a real concern, and which is why the work that we do around Grow Our Own is so important as well. And Children's Services, really reducing the use of agency staff. I think we were in the 50s a couple of years ago. We're now down to almost single figures getting to, I believe. So, really importance of that work that we're doing to support the workforce as well.
Right. Sorry, Anne, I was going to ask you, was there any points you wanted to make on this discussion?
Only to reiterate how the budget process works. Maybe that it is quite useful, seeing as though we're coming into budget setting through the autumn, and all councils will be caught up in conversations about service budgets in the coming weeks. In terms of the risk budget and things held at risk, as previously been explained, it is for all services to identify and pull together things that could come on the radar, become a potential issue, and we've got it on our register. We're mindful of it and it coming through. That is generally a sizable figure, and a big chunk of that does not materialise. Last year, for example, we had very little. If you look at our outturn for last year, there was very little on the risk that was purely on the risk register that actually materialised. But this year, of course, we've got a different position. And as part of our budget setting at the moment, where, as you'd imagine, we've got quite a long list of things on there, things that we don't need to put into our pressures. We don't need to overstate service budgets at this point, but we need to be mindful and ready and have a contingency plan if that's going to occur. The finance manager, Jackie Pugh, who's here today, she gets caught up in that level of detail and works with the service to provide the justification for it going onto the list, as does all service areas. So that is a process, and it's there for a reason, to help make sure we've got a contingency plan for these things if they do occur.
Yeah, and I've already got a note in my head that when we come to look at scrutinising the budget plans for next year, this area is something we need to look at.
Absolutely.
Around this, and it's making sure we make the right judgment, and whether we bring
It will be part of, I would imagine it'll be part of the budget pack. I've already got that information together, and it'll be part of that budget pack. I would have said it's not a long list, but each service area has got some items on there.
Yeah, thank you. Any other member apart from me and Chris got any questions around adult services? I take silence as no. Can we then go on to children's services, which I think, sorry, I'm not very good at trying using a split screen. I do apologize. But where does it start? I can't see where it starts. Oh, I can see.
Page 75.
Page 75.
Yeah, sorry, I
Chair.
do apologize. Right. Anything you want to say before we start, Sharon? Not bad.
Thank you. Sorry, Chair. Thank you. I think Nina's obviously given you an overview of the report in some detail. I think the things just to add for myself at this point are that we have found ourselves in this position previously for Children's Services budget in terms of Q1 and Q2 position. And I think when you look at the graph in terms of the increasing cost of placements, so that's the total cost for the year in terms of going up from 6.7 million to 10.1 million, then that is some of the reason and justification for the overspend at this particular point in time. But actually, when you think that that is almost 4 million, actually the deficit in children's services, although is high, is actually, if it was in its totality around that 4 million, you would expect to see that much greater in terms of the predicted overspend. And the reason why that hasn't increased is because the work that happens around our closer to home work, so that is around looking at all our children who are looked after, scrutinising all their individual needs and care plans, and looking at a step down approach, which is why our numbers of children looked after have remained fairly stable. That does include the cohort of our unaccompanied asylum seeking children, which actually has grown over the last 12 months. That does add a financial pressure in terms of those individual needs when there's complexity. So that becomes an ongoing kind of budgetary challenge in terms of that. But the numbers in terms of our children looked after have remained fairly stable. Lots of work is happening in terms of reducing that number per head in terms of children returning home or their needs being met in a different way. So in effect, the position could have been a lot more challenging, but actually because of the work that's been undertaken in terms of returning children home and looking at the closer to home strategy as a whole, a lot of really good work has happened in there in terms of keeping those numbers sort of stable. So that's the only thing I just want to add at this point.
Yeah, right. Before I ask members any questions, I've noted that it's actually an improving position from Q1. If I'm right, it's 5.25, was it, in 5.29 in Q1, and that's reduced a little bit by 400,000. Members, any questions on children's? Yes, Chris.
I mean, you mentioned about unaccompanied children coming across. Do we get any funding that comes with that? And is that being reviewed in relation to the increased costs that we're incurring as a part of it? And in relation to the graph, it does seem to actually costs go up significantly from March 24. Is that just then those providers reviewing their cost pressures and then just transferring that across to the packages of care that we are then requesting?
So Councillor Chris, in terms of your points around our unaccompanied asylum-seeking children, so the numbers that we receive are based on a national referral mechanism, which is set by UK government, and that population per local authority is determined through a statistical base of how they work that out. Our numbers have increased over the last 12 months in accordance with that statistical base, and there is a cost that comes with that. So you do get some financial support, but actually where the challenges become is if a child and young person arrives here, and of course we're assessing their needs constantly because we don't know that child, we don't know that young person when they arrive here with us in Powys. We have found that some children require a lot more intervention in terms of the complexity of the trauma, in terms of they've endured on their journey from wherever they've come from, and those costs actually become a financial pressure for us in terms of those additional costs, because the money that you receive from UK government doesn't actually match that level of complexity. So that is an ongoing pressure for us. In terms of challenging that, in terms of the decisions made by UK government and that financial element, we are looking at writing to UK government about those pressures and actually the way in which the national referral mechanism actually operates. For us as a rural authority, it's quite challenging to have lots of young people with different ethnicity needs in terms of diet, religion, etc. And that can be quite challenging for us in a rural setting, whereas in an urban setting, that might be easier to kind of manage and navigate for those individual young people. So we are looking at writing to UK government around some of the challenges that we are particularly facing here in Powys from that rurality perspective. But we have raised that also with WLGA, through ADSS Cymru, through the All Wales Heads of Children's Services into Welsh Government, but it is one of those areas that is managed by the UK government. In terms of, what was the second part of your question, sorry?
It was to do with the rising cost. On that graph you indicated it significantly increases from March 24, and my query is whether that is then those providers catching up with their costs, because that would be, I'm anticipating inflation would be a significant component to that, and utility costs going up. So I just wanted to know whether we've looked at that in any shape or form, and are we ensuring that we're getting best value for what we require?
Yes, that's a really good observation and point, Councillor Chris. I think that definitely does determine some of the complexity around the cost of placements, but I wouldn't say that it's entirely all of that. The not-for-profit agenda, which is a commitment by Welsh Government to remove profit from care, is in bill at the moment and soon to become legislation. What we are seeing as a result of that, it is definitely a provider market right now. So the increase in demand for children with complex needs to have particularly residential care, the cost of those placements per week, we have seen increase dramatically over the last 12 months. And I think some of those providers are actually seeing it as an opportunity to kind of develop their provision right now, but they also can charge whatever they feel is reasonable from themselves. But actually what we've seen is the cost of those individual placements has risen and almost doubled in terms of complexity. So again, it's about trying to get the best value for money, as you said, in terms of individual placements based on individual needs of those children. Some of the mitigating factors that we're looking at are building our own residential homes. So we do have some of our own homes, but actually what we are also finding is that doesn't necessarily reduce the cost in terms of those placements. That's because the challenges around recruiting social care staff into our residential homes, etc., relying on agency social care staff to bridge those gaps. So it isn't necessarily a cheaper option to have your own residential homes, but actually through the not-for-profit lens, it absolutely is the direction of travel that Welsh Government are expecting and wanting us to deliver in terms of that not-for-profit lens. So I guess the cost of placements is changing. It is a captive market for that provider at the moment. The not-for-profit agenda hopefully will enable us to reduce that when we can grow our own systems and resources to prevent that need for going outside of Powys, outside of Wales into England and source placements from there.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Sandra.
Diolch yn fawr, Cadeirydd. Bore da pawb. Thank you for bringing these questions up, Councillor Chris. Just one or 2 points, if I may, to elaborate on what has been said already by Sharon. Thank you, Sharon. With our unaccompanied seeking asylum children, when this began, there was a longer period to assess these youngsters, and let us not forget, when these youngsters arrive on the shores, people don't know what language they have, any of their backgrounds. They don't come with passports or anything like that. So the first thing that needs to be done is to identify what language they have. And then, of course, you have to bear what religion they have. So the number of days that these youngsters have to be assessed has been reduced, as I've said. So that adds extra stress to our staff, because our staff have to go out, meet.
So you've gone quiet. I can't.
These youngsters.
Sorry, Sandra, we lost you for a while.
Oh, sorry. I don't know how far.
We got to the point where you were saying that our staff have to go out to assess them.
Sorry, yes. And when they assess them, they have to identify what language they have, what religion they come from, and a bit about their backgrounds. And these youngsters are traumatized, having traveled all those horrendous journeys that they've come. So it's a lot of direct assessment that needs to be done ASAP, having that reduced window to do that. So that adds pressure to placing our youngsters. And I won't go through anything that Sharon has already said, but coming to the not-for-profit agenda, I think that's the right way forward. It comes down to supply and demand. There is a high demand for these placements. Any private provider realises and is able to cash in on that, for want of a better expression. And that's what we need to cut out and reduce, because with a high demand and a short supply, they are in that position where they can charge what they want. And unfortunately, it's not right that our most vulnerable are being exploited in that way. So we are trying our best to bring children in and retain children in our county where they're at home. And that's what we're trying to do. But it's the costs and the supply of staff as well. Getting qualified staff at short notice is not doable. And that's why we're doing what we can with our Grow Our Own. As has been said, we've got students coming in and going through the system, and that has really increased. As Nina has already said, we had 57 agency staff, and that's now reduced to single figures, which is a tremendous turnaround. And our sickness within the staff is very, very low. So it shows that our teams are working well together, and we're doing all we can to provide for our youngsters in-house. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sandra. Yes, Councillor Ange.
Hi. How many of the adults that or children that are coming over seeking asylum do we bring actually into county, or do we have to keep them in centres? Are we actually allowed to bring them back to Wales? Because at one time they pretty much all wanted to stay in London, which obviously is much more expensive than bringing them back even into Wales, to Cardiff or Swansea, where they would be closer to us. What is the legal requirement for us to do with that these days?
Hi, Councillor Ange. The right now is that we can have children in Wales and in Powys. There's no legal legislation to prevent that from occurring. The national referral mechanism actually is in existence, and it maps out all children across whole of the UK. So there's no difference in terms of Wales and England and Scotland. It's mapped out across the UK in terms of the percentage of young people that you have. I mean, you are quite correct in that we do have some of our young people in London, and we also have some of our young people in Swansea, Cardiff. We also have some of our young people in Powys themselves. So what we're trying to do is build a sort of community and family here in Powys, where if we bring people together, then actually they are settling better if they're in a small group together, in a home together. So that's what we're trying to do in terms of providing that kind of level of nurture, so we can identify what their individual needs are, what their cultural needs are, and we can then work out how we can do that. And in terms of Powys, we've actually been quite successful with some of that, but again, it just depends on which part of Powys. So we are looking more towards Newtown and Ystrad in terms of provision there, because it's easier to get from Newtown across to a mosque in Shropshire, and it's easier to get to Swansea and Cardiff from Ystrad in terms of accessing mosques there. But actually we have had an imam who comes over from Shropshire into Newtown, and that's been really helpful, and we're also building lots of relationships in the south. So again, it's something that we're growing. It's something that we want to kind of develop our kind of infrastructure within Powys to be able to offer the best possible opportunities that we can do for our young people.
So we have got sort of like communities that they can join up with in Powys. That's what, because like they come in for so many diverse places, and basically they want some of their own community, don't they? Because we would all be the same if we were just thrown into somewhere. And I'm just really pleased, and thank you very much for making sure that they have got their own communities that they can join, and their own mosque or whatever that they can go to. Thank you for that reassurance.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Before I bring Nina, can I just ask another question around that? How many of the unaccompanied and asylum children are placed with foster parents from their own cultural background in Powys? Do we have any of that, or?
No, we haven't
No.
got any, unfortunately.
Okay. Is that something you're looking to try and develop, or would be looking to try and develop if we could?
Definitely. We're working quite a lot with Megan Lewis, who kind of leads on the refugees and asylum seeking adults, so from the Syrian refugees and Ukrainian resettlement. So we're doing some work with her, and actually we've recently been in touch with a psychiatrist that he's kind of well known in terms of globally well known, and he's actually coming to Powys to do some work with us in terms of a pilot study looking at exactly that, how we can kind of interconnect more in terms of communities that we've got in Powys, but also looking at it through a trauma lens to see what additional support, additional things that we can add in terms of their journey, but also that support around it.
Yes, Nina. Thank you, Sharon.
Yeah, no, thank you, Chair. I was just going to come in and just remind committee that we have got a report coming to the next scrutiny committee on accompanied asylum-seeking children. So that'll be another great opportunity to really get into depth and to discuss this in detail as well. So sorry, that's all, Chair. I just wanted to put that reminder.
Yeah, thank you. Can I ask a question about the table where you've got your line showing the growth in the budget? How confident are you that we can actually control it at 10.1 million?
I think that's the challenge. That's the actual reality of the challenge in terms of controlling that. What we do is just review every single placement at any opportunity. I sign off every placement that's required, whether that's in a foster family or a residential setting. So we look at cost, what the value for money is in terms of that placement, what the needs of that child are there any alternatives that we can think or not. But it is an upward trajectory, as we've seen over the last 12 months. And it is a provider market right now. I think when the not-for-profit agenda becomes legislation, that hopefully will give some assurances and confidence in the market in terms of what that looks like for providers, what those mitigating circumstances are going to be to move to a not-for-profit organisation. So there are some organisations that are looking at that right now, but there are also many that are not, and they're waiting very much for that legislation to be passed before they then decide and determine what next steps are they going to take in order to move to that not-for-profit approach.
Okay, thank you. These are numbers are very reasonably stable, aren't they, in the looked after children? You know, they only vary by plus or minus 10. Is the percentage of the children looked after that are in residential placements going up, or is it just the cost?
The actual overall numbers of our children residential is coming down, but the costs are going up.
Wow. Yeah, because I've just done a quick calculation, and you know, it's around 40,000 for the average placement. You know, if you take the 10 million divided by 238. Yeah, okay. Right. Chris.
Yeah, some placements are 10 to 12,000 pounds a week.
Okay, so that's up to 600,000 a year. Wow. Chris, did you had your hand up for a short period? Did you want to come in? You're on mute, Chris.
I suppose it's more of how do we address some of these challenges, because I attended the Sustainable Powys event last night, and the health board reported a significant number of vacancies, and a lot of the delivery of packages of care, whether related to adults or to children, are going to be about workforce. And I know we're doing a huge amount in relation to growing our own but that's a challenge that's not going to go away. And I think it's within this context that we need to start examining how we can do things differently. I think within one of the papers, there was talk about how we use technology, and I just wondered of whether there's any considerations of how we're using technology going forward in the remainder of this financial year to potentially help that situation, but also to help our recruitment challenges, because as we know, we're on the rise of the bell curve going up. So there's going to be more demand and less younger people, and how are we going to balance that off? And I just wanted to get your impression about that.
Mia.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Chris. And I think maybe it'd be great if Sharon and Sharon both came in as well to respond, because it's a really key point and a question and a challenge that you raise. In terms of impact on workforce, you know, I spoke earlier, didn't I, about the demographics here in Powys and the reducing working age population, and that's the impact of that, isn't it? Is that health and us, we are seeing those levels of vacancies, those difficulties in terms of recruitment and retention, etc. And so you're absolutely right, Chris, Councillor Chris. It's doing things differently, thinking differently. You'll be aware of one of the Regional Partnership Board programs of work is called Workforce Futures, and I know that we have had information in the past, but just a reminder about that area of work as well. And one of the key things that they're doing is going into schools and high schools to kind of make young people excited and aware of all the opportunities there are for fantastic careers here in Powys in terms of health and social care, etc. So that's a way of us trying to look forwards to the future and to make sure that we've got the workforce that we need for the future as well. So I know there's a lot of work happening around that. And in terms of technology enabled care, absolutely, that's a key area of work. And we absolutely need to see an increase in the number of people who are supported with technology-enabled care to remain at home and independent for as long as possible. So again, that is a project that is supported by Regional Partnership Board through RIF funding as well. But you're absolutely right. But would it be okay, Chair, if I perhaps asked Sharon Fruin and Sharon Powell to just give a bit more detail in terms of adults or children's as well in that area?
Yeah. Sharon Fruin.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, happy to come in on that question, Councillor Chris. As Nina's described, there is a significant work stream around technology, tech-enabled care and connectivity. One of the things that we're doing in our rectification plan is that enhanced scrutiny around the packages of care that are coming forward, and actually really drilling down into those questions of could tech be a replacement to the care that's being requested, not only to be more cost effective, but also to provide better outcomes, because often, you know, there's not such a delay. They won't have the delay in sourcing a package of care, and the person can remain independent. It's less intrusive, and all the benefits that we know come with technology enabled care. There is something around us developing greater awareness, and that's something that we've been trying to do with our teams, and the tech team has been doing some awareness raising with the teams, but we're also looking around our structure and whether or not we, with our program of work around our locality approach, around whether we have specific tech officers based within the locality to enhance that provision in a more grassroots level.
Thank you. Sharon?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question, Councillor Chris, and it did come up quite a lot last night, didn't it, in Brecon, in terms of that kind of overarching kind of workforce discussions. And I think affordable housing was actually one of those kind of top key areas that kind of came out of some of the group discussions last night. So I think that's really important and interesting in terms of how that's going to kind of progress, I guess, across Powys going forwards. There is a health and social care academy, so that does sit across Powys Teaching Health Board, the local authority and third sector. So that academy has generated a lot of interest, not only going into schools, but from a wider perspective as well, in terms of encouraging maybe some young people that are in university to consider coming back to Powys as part of their placements, and to then consider remaining in Powys for employment purposes. So a lot of work has kind of been mapped up around that, which I think that is a really interesting and great initiative to encourage young people back into Powys. We do a lot of work around flexible working patterns, looking at different ways to encourage and adapt, really, in terms of the lives of people, so that they can actually work and have a better improved work-life, home-life balance. So a lot of work happens around that in terms of just encouraging as many opportunities as is possible for that employment. In terms of technology, we will be having a new system, as we touched upon earlier on in the meeting, in 2025. That will bring lots of strengths in terms of having a system that will be more kind of in tune with practitioners rather than system driven. So I'm hoping that will kind of lead to more efficiencies as we kind of go forward in terms of that digital transformation. I lead on a digital transformation group, so it is very much asking practitioners how we can kind of be more digitally equipped across both adult social care and children's services. And that's been a really interesting group in terms of developing some ideas and concepts, which we are now looking to put some of that into practice. So we're learning from other local authorities about what they've been actually doing, how they've become more efficient and effective through that digital lens. So the use of artificial intelligence, so AI, there's lots of different and growing and emerging areas that we can consider about how we can be more efficient, more effective, just by using digital technology as a whole. So again, that's something that's growing, emerging. It's a national picture as well, where some authorities are a little bit ahead of us in terms of some of their knowledge and experience. So again, what we are doing is learning from that. So that lots of practitioners are having conversations with different people across the UK about what can we learn, what can we do differently? What can we bring back to Powys? And that is really important. And I'm really pleased that you mentioned that digital world, because that is key to anything going forward for us to be more sustainable in terms of that digital lens.
Thank you. Councillor Sean.
Thank you, Councillor Gareth. Apologies for the delay. I'm on my phone because my internet is so slow at home. I just wanted to add a quick word in there around early help and prevention being key to managing Councillor Chris's point about the bell curve, you know. And early help and prevention, as everybody knows, is about supporting people to stay healthy, fit and well for as long as possible. Sharon has already mentioned we've got extended life expectancy now because of advances in medical science, but not all of that extended life expectancy is healthy life expectancy, and we have a role here working with our partners to make that life expectancy, that extended life expectancy, as healthy as possible as well. You know, the key components of our well-being are feeling independent, feeling like we've got some control over what happens to us in our life, and having social interaction, having a strong social network around us, people to call on when we need support. And these are key factors in enabling people to stay well and healthy. We know that social isolation is one of the key drivers of poor mental health and poor physical health outcomes as well. You know, so I'm one of the last of the baby boomers. I hope I've got maybe 20, 30 years left in me yet. I don't have care and support needs yet. How do we keep me healthy and fit so that I don't have health and care needs that require a service from these good women in this room or their successes in years to come, you know? And Hilary Cottam's research shows that people generally need, what it comes down to is people need a hand when they need it, you know, somebody to call on when they need a hand with something, and a good social network to call on. And the Sustainable Powys locality work that we'll be doing is all about creating a system out there, working with the third sector, with the health board, with communities, with town and community councillors, with residents who've got great ideas and creativity to design the system that will enable that going forward.
Yeah. Can I just back that up as well, Sean? I think the best statement I've had around what Sustainable Powys is, it came from Sharon Powell in an email when she said it's about how we can build stronger and more resilient communities ongoing. And last night it was really interesting. There's some really good examples of groups in the community doing work, and I can't think which community now was it. They meet a group of them.
They've got the wellbeing group.
Yeah, where they meet weekly, and it was really clear that the lady that was in our group from the health service said that they felt that 80% of the issues were down to social factors.
Absolutely.
And it's only 20% that's down to health issues. So it's how we can actually, as you say, make us live longer, healthier. Yeah. So, right. Any other points from members before we go? I think we've had quite a good discussion this morning around this. And it's clear there's massive pressures ongoing. And I think our challenge is how do we make sure we get the right level of risk in next year's budget in some ways, so we can actually manage it within the identified budgets from the start. Any final points that any other members want to make, especially from those members who haven't made a comment yet today? And I think there's a big issue, but you know, I've had a quick because I'm a finance geek, I suppose. I looked in the settlement, you know, the SSA figures, and adult social services are currently spending more than a total SSA figure for. I know it's unhypothecated, but there's a big gap there, and it's something we need to look at. I think of trying to encourage Welsh government to put more money into those service areas. But that's something. Anything else for any members? No. I've got one point that I want to make to finance, but I'm going to do that through email, if that's all right. And it's nothing significant. It's just the formatting of a couple of tables. But I'll drop Anne and Jackie an email, if that's okay. Right, members, thank you for that. Can we go on to the next one? Sorry, I'm gonna have to go back to the top of my screen now. I haven't got two screens. I need to get a second screen. Right. The only other item is work program. It's down. The next meeting is, no, that's not right. Carrie Ann was going to correct this, wasn't you, Carrie Ann? About
Hello,
the date.
Chair. Yes, so I just wanted to apologise. I put a typo in on page 2 of the agenda. The second meeting date listed in the forward work programme should read the 12th of December 2024. So
Okay.
apologies for that.
Thank you. Just testing us, and we've all failed. Right. Thank you. Members, if you could stay on at the end of the meeting, because we're going to have a confidential update. But can I thank you all very much for joining us for this meeting, and we'll see you later. We'll see you in a few minutes.
Chair, sorry,
Yeah.
could I just so the next meeting isn't confidential, so we don't have to move into a confidential. It's just an informal meeting.
Right, but
Just that's
can we just stop recording then?
yes, we can. It's just if it was confidential, that would have to be on the agenda. I just wanted it to be clear to the public that.
Okay. Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. So that's my error for not being an experienced chair.
I'll move this across now.
Right. Thank you. Right. Cheers.